we still need to fix the plumbing.
Yeah.
I don't need any more apps.
Right.
Personally, I need plumbing.
And once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast. I'm Alex Turkovich. I'm so glad you could join us here today and every week as I seek out and interview leaders and practitioners who are innovating and building great scale CS programs. My goal is to self-educate and bring you along for the ride so that you get the insights that you need to evolve your own digital customer success program. If you want more info or you need to get in touch or sign up to get the latest updates from us, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. But for now, let's get started with today's show. Welcome to this episode 10 of the DCS podcast. So glad to have you back. Every week, as you know, I try to interview a variety of different people that are in some way either directly or tangentially involved in digital customer success. And through the course of these conversations, I've spoken with not just leaders, but practitioners, operations folks, admins. And I really set out to try to capture as many role diverse people as possible for the podcast. Today is no exception as we are speaking with Joel Passen, who is the co-founder of Sturdy.ai. Sturdy.ai is a pretty unique platform onto its own, and we definitely do talk about that. But another reason why I was looking forward to this conversation is because Joel isn't a CS leader per se. Joel is a revenue leader. His history is in leading revenue teams and has definitely been involved in a variety of different businesses. And so he's seen a lot, and he's seen a lot of what works and what doesn't work. And so in our conversation, we talk a lot about data. We talk a lot about data between systems. We talk about, the place of CS within various orgs, delivering customer value digitally, and a whole bunch of just really solid nuggets that I think you'll get a lot out of. So please enjoy my conversation with Joel Passen. I know I sure did. Welcome to the podcast, Joel Passen. I first learned about you from the Lifetime Value podcast. It was an episode with Brian Hall, who sang your accolades. I don't know if you know this, but he's like, Joel's doing some really cool stuff with Sturdy that has CS, broad CS implications and whatnot. And I think what part of the reason why I wanted you on is, because of that, but then also you don't have a CS background. You come from the revenue side of the house, and we've been very focused on CS folks and leaders and operators and all that kind of stuff. But it's always great to I want as much kind of role diversity as possible on the cast. And so you have an extensive sales background. You sit on tons of advisory boards, I noticed as well, and currently co-founder at Sturdy for I think 3 years now-ish. So welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. And thanks to Brian Hall for discovering me. I mean, maybe he should get some sort of like agent spiff or something like that, or some sort of maybe the royalties for all the money that you're paying me, Alex.
Yeah.
If Brian Hall tunes into this, I'll cut him in.
Yeah. The 50 cents is in an envelope on the way.
Maybe $10 or something.
Something. I don't know. So, first, before we get into the nitty gritty, I'd love to get a little bit of, your origin story, if you will, just so everybody knows, who you are and kind of what brought you to where you are today and whatnot. So, enlighten us.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks for having me. It all started in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm the son of the 216. No, I actually I started my professional career sort of accidentally starting a recruiting firm, having realized that I didn't want to be a professional bartender or drywaller in a ski town in Idaho.
Sure.
Fell into it. I started my first company, which was a managed service provider for recruiting, in 2008. We sold that off private equity several years later. And I started inside of that company. And this is kind of a theme, I think, through my professional career. we started building technology in that business to optimize our own infrastructure, like things that, we had juicy problems that we wanted to solve. And quite frankly, at the time, there wasn't a lot of like tech to solve it. Like
Yeah.
this is during ASP time, not SaaS land. So we started building this product to manage our business. We didn't end up selling off the intellectual property. We kept it. So in 2009, I walked two doors down from the company I had started and left, put up a little Xeroxed at the time, like handwritten logo that said Newton on the window, and rolled my chair into the other room with my co-founder, Steve Hazelton.
Oh,
And
wow.
we built that business. We bootstrapped that business completely, never took a dime outside funding at Newton. Built it up to about 3,700 customers, had a nice eight-figure exit to the fourth largest payroll provider in the United States called Paycor in 2016.
A little known company called Paycor.
Little Paycor. They have a stadium now. They didn't
Yeah.
have it. It wasn't. Bob had a cool part of Paycor, by the way. On a side note, is they do payroll for a bunch of sports teams, and I'm a sports fan. So
There you go.
it was.
Yeah.
This was before they had Paycor Stadium in lovely Cincinnati,
Yeah.
hosting the not so lovely Bengals. But
Well, I have a lot. I have a lot of relatives in the Cincinnati area, and yeah, it can be painful at times.
well, as I mentioned, I'm from Cleveland, which
Hmm.
in a sports capacity and maybe other things is sort of a factory of sadness. So Cincinnati, Cincinnati makes Cleveland look pretty good, man. In
Yeah.
any event, I digress. So I spent a little bit of time with Paycor as obligated, learned quite a bit. And then I joined a company based in London called Beamery and ran global revenue for them. So I've always sort of been at the intersection of the product and the output of the product, and
Hmm.
then the commercial side of the business. So typically that would involve some sort of customer success or account management. I think I started back when it was customer support. So I'm dating
Right.
myself a little. So that's my background. So I started Sturdy in 2019. We've raised a couple rounds of funding. I run the commercial side of the business again, and yeah, now I'm here with you
That's awesome.
Friday.
Um, could you? I'm going to get into more kind of CS topics here in a bit, but give us a little bit of rundown of Sturdy and what what you're trying to. I guess what you set out to accomplish, and kind of what your big hairy goals are.
Yeah. Well, I would say first that if you kind of take the comment not in vain, that we were trying to solve problems that we had as operators. So this being my third startup, my third company that I started, but I've worked in others, and as you mentioned at the top, I've invested in, and I'm an active advisory board member in others. I think um, the problem that we're solving at Sturdy is really taking all of this unstructured data that flows into your business. If you think about it, it's pretty amazing. Like 90% of the data that modern businesses collect today is unstructured.
Yeah.
Unstructured data is dark data. It's usually just gobbledygook. It's like oatmeal. And we're not using it. So companies are running customer success, they're running account management, they're running sales, they're running all of these different business functions on telemetry based data that is great and helps, but informs only 60% of our decision making. I mean, it's so small. And
Mm.
so what we set out to do was answer the questions why, like what next and why. And so Sturdy, fast forward, has become really a way we describe it in layman's terms. It's a check engine light for your products and your users and your customers. So we call it a check engine light for the business, and it discovers critical signals. There's 30 language models in the product that discover critical signals and all this unstructured data. And then we have this data find people who need to see it across different teams.
It's an amazing thing to think about because the amount of ratty data I've dug through just to get some semblance of an insight with maybe 50% confidence in what I was looking at is like too many to count. And having those insights on hand is valuable, obviously not just from a CS perspective, but just teams in general from C-suite down. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the thing that I tell people, kind of in a weird space, because we started this company in 2019, and AI is kind of on a J curve, right? It's like Sturdy.ai is our website. I
Mm.
think we started the company as Sturdy.ai.com.
Oh yeah.
And at one point, we took the AI out of it, so we didn't like push people away. Um,
Interesting.
and so we were folks that had a problem. Like we wanted to solve this problem. Just so happened that language models and i.e. AI, was a way that we could start to solve the problem at scale.
Hmm.
And so we were kind of hiding the fact that not hiding it, but we weren't an AI forward like we're in your face. We're AI. Now the world is sort of understanding that AI is more than just a possibility. It could be the next epic in sort of the tech
Yeah.
world.
Right.
Um, and in it, by the way, I'm not sure that it's serving us any better to a certain extent because it's really confusing out there. But I always like to say that we were a bunch of people trying to solve a problem. Just so happened we used AI instead of a bunch of AI people trying to look for a problem to solve.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting to see where all the language models are going and who's implementing what and the fact that you guys have been. Yeah, I think that is fascinating that you had to drop the AI because you're kind of you needed to attract folks into your business, and now it's like it's all the rage, it's all everybody can talk about, and we're like stop already.
Yeah, we might have lost people early on in this pod if we're not careful. If we're just
I know, right?
banter about AI, people are like, I don't want to hear anymore. Like, don't say GPT. It's like politics season, man.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I heard somebody make the analogy to crypto the other day. Just AI is the crypto of today, which I don't buy that for 1 second, honestly. Just because it's real.
That's funny. Yeah, in its essence, yes.
Hmm.
I think on the hype, I would agree with the person that you heard that from. I would agree, like on the hype bandwagon or the hype chain. It's a little deafening. I mean, you hear a lot about it, and I think that's because it's going to be very pervasive. I saw the other day, I think somebody was like messing with Product Hunt, but they have a AI blockchain crypto startup out there, and I was like, I looked at it for a minute. I'm like, at first I was kind of disgusted, and then I'm like, good on you. I mean, that
Hmm.
is about as, I mean, the name of the company is Cliche AI. No, it's not.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's in that sort of hype track. You got to be a little careful.
Yeah, it's funny. Even if it was a real thing, it'd be interesting. But even as a joke, it's phenomenally interesting.
Yeah.
One thing that I like to ask all of my guests, kind of at the outset, is for a bit of an elevator pitch of their interpretation of digital customer success, because it does
Yeah.
mean something different to everybody depending on your background and where you're from and what you do and all that kind of stuff. So I'd love your kind of 10-second elevator pitch. Like, what is digital CS?
Yeah, I tried not to get too prepared for this. Like I got to figure, given it's the title of the pod and of a passion of yours, but I look at it like I think just because of my lens into the world these days professionally, I think this is a data driven approach to serve your customers based on specific variables like product mix, like segmentation, like the stage they are in their journey. So I don't overcomplicate
Mm,
what I think is DCS. Like it's a data driven approach to managing your customers at scale.
yep.
Mic drop, like hard stop.
Yep. Yeah, and we did chat about this. What was it, a week ago? I don't know. The weeks kind of flow together. And you brought up some interesting points in our initial conversation, just around the fact that the tooling is evolving, and especially in CS, the tooling is evolving. The tooling in CS, I think, has always been a little bit behind where it is in sales or in marketing or whatnot. But it's getting there, and I'd love your kind of input and take on what where you see kind of operating models as teams and as organizations going as the tool sets and generative AI and the collective intelligence of it
Yeah.
all is evolving.
Yeah. Okay. So not to
Yes to.
Yeah, not to dissuade that. So I think what's made all this possible, by the way, I'm on this big, and I'm trying not to be on this bandwagon on the pod, but I think it's worth mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about my simple approach to DCS, right? Like it's a data driven issue. It's data. Well, the modern data stack, if you know anything, you know what I'm talking about, like modern cloud data warehouses, cloud based systems, cloud storage, plus processing power. Like we're kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
Like the modern business has a modern data stack. Like we're not using a bunch of relational databases. I hope we're not. Like a bunch of relational databases and running our businesses on uh, proprietary ERP systems. Like all of this stuff is now data can flow between these cloud systems pretty effectively, right?
Sure.
And store them
Yeah.
effectively. That's the good part. I think the modern enterprise technology stack, though, that layers on top of the modern data stack needs to evolve. And I think we're getting there. I think we're going the right direction. But I think it actually is a laggard. Like instead of developing, like we're developing all these silos and tools and engagement systems and onboarding systems and all these things that are sitting in their own lane. And I think that is actually the hindrance. It's the obstacle. It's the speed bump for broader DCS or digital customer success maturity, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, the processes and people that we use to organize these things, I think will mature as well. I think we're screwed a little bit we're still creating silos and we're still creating point solutions. And until we make them all kind of talk together like the modern data stack has done, my thesis is like, we got a little ways to go.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, this is an incredibly minute example, right? But I think it's indicative of kind of the larger issue that we have in general with all these desperate platforms we're trying to get to work together, but they kind of don't work together. We were importing some CSAT scores from one system to the other, and one system stored it as like a text field, and the other one stored it as a number field. And so you have to do some data transformations in order to get it into the right data. Like it's that kind of stuff that you need, like the operational prowess and the human behind it, for now anyway, to be able to handle those things. And I see that evolving completely over the next decade or so, obviously.
I hope it's sooner than a decade. I read this article. There's a guy named Ken, so it's Kenn. His last name is So. Google him. I think he's at Smartsheet as a corp dev person now, but he was a venture capitalist prior. He's smart, techie, producty. But he defines some of these terms. What you just described is called data munging.
Yeah,
it's a really gross term,
yeah.
right? Like kind of yuck.
Totally.
But I think for folks that it goes back to like all of this data and is in a different format. They're in different systems, and we're still using humans now. So if you think about building a digital customer success team, you could go to Peter and crew at ESG, and they can give you all this great advice, by the way, and they're great.
Yep.
It's not even a shameless plug for them. They know what they're doing. They can help you with segmentation, all this stuff. And I'm not getting paid, and I'm not giving any of my quarter of royalty to Peter. Right. I'd also say Brian Hall has thoughts on this as well, but more to the point, you can put all these different types of people with different skill sets in place, but you're still going to need a big fleet of data engineers if you're going to make this work. Mm-hmm. And so I think we still have infrastructure problems to solve. And a lot of it is around data normalization and transformation. So pre-processing data, getting it all from these systems in all of the modals that it's in, and then pre-processing the stuff, flattening it out, and then being able to use it in tomorrow's AI, because everything's shifting. Mm-hmm. That's the holy grail for me. That's like the stuff that I read about and look at, and like if I want to invest, I think about it like the plumbing. We still need to fix the plumbing.
Yeah.
I don't need any more apps.
Right.
Personally, I need plumbing. And that's what the modern data stack is. It's like plumbing, just modern plumbing. It's like going and retrofitting a house that you bought on a flip and saying, yeah, we're going to put some good piping in here so it doesn't freeze, that it gets the waste out, that it gets clean water in. Like, we need to think about that in the same way of the modern like engagement stack that we're using for digital customer success specifically, because it's so important to segment your data for DCS. Like that's the key, I think. I'm preaching, but you get the point.
No, yeah, it makes sense. And you need to find the people that think the plumbing work is sexy and they want to work on it.
Plumbing's never sexy. There's a reason that like you can't get a plumber to come. If you blow something out in your house in Austin, right? You got to wait like a week for somebody to show up, like a plumber, because it's not sexy.
Nope. It's not. It's not.
Hey, Alex, you got one of those. It's all the rage in Austin. I got to ask you this. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
The cooling pool, where you go out and buy one of those big feed.
No.
You don't have one of those?
No. In fact, we made the conscious decision to not be in Austin. Just, we're like well north of Austin, and nothing against being in Austin, but it's like, I want some space between the houses, and but no cooling pools. No, that's not not part of the equation here.
I'm taking a survey every time I talk to somebody in Texas. If you got one of those feed things they put on ranches, I'm not grew up in more of an urban area, but they're everywhere, man.
Yeah, like, and the ice baths too. That's the thing.
It's like a Northern California thing. You sell a house now, and I've got the ice plunge. You got to have an ice plunge.
The ice plunge and the lap pool where you just swim against a non-existent current. We talked. So we've talked tooling, we've talked data, we've talked plumbing. So some interesting digressions there. I want to get into your mind a little bit with regards to kind of the place of CS within kind of modern org structures, right? Because CS, the proliferation of chief customer officer is a relatively recent thing, right? We've seen CS in revenue organizations, we've seen CS in product organizations and whatnot. And arguably CS is a big part of, the renewals cycle with renewals teams, even within CS or within sales teams and whatnot. So I'd love your kind of take on, what in your head is best in class from an org structure perspective.
So I think the first comment that I would make is that CS at large, traditional CS at large, account management, post-sales operations, right, that focus on the customer.
Sure.
I think that belongs in a revenue org. If we all can sort of coalesce around NRR, NDR being our North Star metric as subscription-based technology businesses, which probably most of our audience here, and most of the people that we know and where you and I work in our worlds, that belongs in a revenue organization. And by the way, the CCO or CRO, that dynamic, that still needs to work out. But I think that the new age CRO will own from cradle to grave the revenue cycle, or new age CCO, whatever that title emerges as, or however that shakes out. It's a revenue job. I do have a caveat though. I think that digital customer success should fall under a product person. Yeah. CPO, VP of product management. I think more and more, I just read a survey, your listeners here can kind of check it out. G2 Crowd put out something about how people want to buy software. They want to buy tech. They don't want to talk to Joel Passen, 17 years ago, selling them software at a demo and, or even today, right? Like, sure, dude, we don't got time for that. I don't want to hop on another Zoom, right? So I think that a lot of this, as long as we're not afraid to throw around cliches in this podcast, like the product-led growth stuff is real. But it's also the buying process that leads people into those types of products. And I think DCS is like a huge elephant in the room when it comes to, if you're going to have a product-led growth motion, like form has to follow function, right? Like you got to
Yeah.
service your customers. So I think that belongs on long-winded, but I think traditional motions absolutely fall in revenue. I think that DCS needs to partner with the product owners and needs to either be tightly coupled or under their org.
It's interesting because, as you were saying that, it's like in a lot of ways, product orgs have been doing digital CS for a long time with like product tours and in-app engagements. That's digital CS, right? It's the automation of frequently asked questions, and it's the automation of things that humans shouldn't waste their time doing. Instead, humans need to actually focus on having high value interactions and all that kind of stuff. So,
I think the handshake is the key.
yeah.
So where do you transition? And I don't know if you maybe touching this with other guests, but for me, in the DCS, there is a transition point where somebody is growing, the usage is up and to the right, they're consuming more data, whatever it is that you're selling them, the value, they're showing you value.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, it does make sense to make a handshake. That's cool stuff. So maybe that's the bridge, the glue. And there's somebody that sits in that, like a program director between DCS and traditional revenue post sales motions. But I think I think what we're going to see is in a modern SaaS, as we mature, SaaS has gotten pretty ubiquitous, right? We've kind of had the same org structures in a lot of our companies. 10 years ago, it's like, we got to have the growth team. That's
Right.
revenue. Right? Like, call them different things, call them what you will. I do think some of these functions are going to change a little bit, though.
Uh-huh.
And the skill sets change a little bit. And they'll be a little bit flatter top of the triangle.
Yep. Yeah, I'm right now. I'm seeing a surge on value. Uh, like not customer success managers necessarily, but customer value managers, where they're focused on the outcome and they're focused on the actual what outcomes do you want to drive with customers, and it makes so much sense to
I have a
me.
friend
Not
that
just
does that.
because my 9 to 5 is going to that model too, but I'm just seeing it all over the place. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, I was interrupting. I mean, I look at I worked with a woman at Beamery. Her first name is Bailey. She, like, I would request her if we were going into a big account because she could be the representative for delivery, right? She was like a solution consultant up front, knew the product really well, but understood how we were going to deliver it. And her career, she's really good at that. Like an IC, really good at it. But is at Miro today in a value group, and it's not a pre-sales value consulting group necessarily. She works with their customers to, like, her whole day is people extrapolating value. I'm sure you live it. But that's real. So I do think that a lot of these functions, and by the way, it's based on data.
Yep.
Like 90% of their motion is based on data that they already have, and then crafting the strategy to deliver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the data and the indicators, and the cleaner that stuff is, the cleaner your motions can be.
Sure, faster they're going to get to value. Look at companies like Seismic that are growing. They bought Lessonly, and their CRO and president Aiden talks about the number one thing at sales kickoff this year is just like, we are focusing on delivering customers value.
Yep.
Everything else we do is about, and it's like, you hear big companies that are successful, and by the way, people like them. I mean, their users like them. I mean, they're pretty nice. They're a good company. It's a pretty pervasive message.
Yeah.
That's a good trend in our industry. Let's not just sell them stuff. Let's deliver them some value is probably the more evolved message there.
The other thing that a personal pet peeve of mine is, like, let's make this as sticky as possible. Like, I get the concept, like, but that's, like, how about we just focus on value outcomes and focus on the customer actually getting a return on their investment? It doesn't, stickiness is a part of it, sure, but like, let's focus on the outcome.
Well, yeah, and that starts in product and then carries through sales. I mean, company on the SaaS maturity curve, underneath the covers a little bit, that's a messy line for a lot of companies still. It's not a direct line to value.
No, it's not.
It meanders.
It's a byproduct. of value. Yeah. Who, not who, what have you seen others do horrifically wrong? Like, what are some of the blunders that you've encountered in people trying to stand up digital motions? We've talked a lot about data. We've talked a lot about how that informs what you're going to do. But, like, what are some things that you see people doing on a repeated basis where you're just like, ugh, cringe factor?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, if you think you're not ready. Maybe you've heard this. If you're not ready, we're not quite ready for digital yet. Yeah, just not there yet.
Mm,
Why aren't you there yet? Oh, we don't have all the data, or our data's a mess. Hey, join the club. Like,
exactly.
you're already in the club. You already qualify. Everyone's data is a total shit show mess. That's the way it works, man. I mean, it goes back to the modern data stack stuff that I talk about. Like, our enterprise data management, it's sucky. Your Salesforce hygiene sucks. If you have Salesforce, your Salesforce hygiene is bad.
100%.
Sorry, it just is.
Yeah, I've never met a
But
clean Salesforce
ever.
instance. Like, nope, doesn't
Does
exist.
anyone? Oh, ours is great. No, it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, well, that's why
So
you have, so many Salesforce contractors out there.
yeah, I mean, by the way, HubSpot's no different. It's all the same.
Sure.
CRM. Let's talk about it. Let's be fair.
Fair.
It's CRM data. So to answer your question specifically, the lack of segmentation, tiering, um, personas, really impacts the journey for these customers. So the first thing that I see people blunder on is like, you don't experiment because you don't think you have the data, so you just give up automatically. You don't even try. You don't even go down. The second thing is you mess up because you're not willing to do the hard work, which is the segmentation, the tiering, the personas, and all these, the product mix and cohort analysis. Like, you just got to go there. I mean, if you want to be competitive, you have to go there. I think the next thing is actually for me, and I've been on the other end of this as a user, as a consumer of SaaS apps, is like the pithy, brainless content that I get.
Yeah.
Like, I could be more scientific and probably more, I could aggrandize my answer further. But honestly, I get a lot of bad content and it like turns me off. And I know what they're doing. Like, someone thought it was a good idea how long I've been a customer to send me an email about something that's silly.
Yeah.
And, actually I open some of this stuff. I mean, maybe I'm a bad person because of it, but like, I'll open it and be like, what are you doing? You need help?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
by the way, I've seen some good stuff where it's like usage-based emails. Like if I'm using something like, I think Calendly does a pretty good job because I use Calendly all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was a late adopter, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know why,
Yeah.
but they do a good job. Like, I turn on features and add stuff, and all of a sudden, like some tips show up, and I'm like, oh, snap! Like, that's pretty good.
It's well thought out. It's not just blindly like shooting out stuff all
It's
over the
not just like
place.
coming out the back end of a CSP or like some email sender thing,
Right.
email blaster,
Yeah.
reverse leaf blower. I think that the other thing is with DCS is the inputs are a little messed up. I don't think we turn over enough cards with surveys. I think you get a little bit of fatigue with customers. I think you get skewed data with the people that are either fired up or people that, you miss the people that are disengaged, or the people that you really actually want to build a journey for. The people that are probably the biggest subscribers of the things that you want to pump to them. They're quiet. They're not around. So I don't think that we do a good job with that stuff. I think in-app is a little tiring sometimes. I ignore it. Surveys, I'm never going to take one. Sorry.
Yep. I mean, it's a balancing act with all this stuff, right? Because if you do it too much, you're going to overwhelm everybody, and if you don't do it enough, then you're
Remiss.
you're remiss. But then if you do it, but you're blind to you're tone blind,
Yeah.
you miss the mark, and so people are just going to filter you out of their inbox.
Here's another mistake that I see is that people do it. Companies do it. They collect some information, and then you do nothing with it.
Yes.
Which I think is like like an unspoken problem a lot of times. Like, it's almost like, oh, we did this like, just not to pick on MPS. I'm not going to get into that, but we did this survey and we do it twice a year. I'm like, great. What'd you get out of it? It's kind of the same as last year. well, what'd you really do with it? Why are you doing it? Like, you're not doing anything with it, like really significant. Then just don't do it anymore. Like,
Yep.
it's a lot of work. It sucks.
Yeah, the value in NPS isn't the score. It's the comments that you get, but it's only really valuable. It's like that's one level of value. But then if you actually, like follow up with the comments that you get and engage your customer and like, hey, we're listening, that's like, whoa.
Dude, you send somebody with like a half, like, somebody who was like a really good BDR that didn't want to go and grind anymore, but is really good with people and like has heard all the objections. Like, that's the ideal person. You call them like some disarming title
Yeah.
and send them back in to deliver a message that like, we heard you, and like, actually, hey, that's actually on the roadmap. We've got a little bit of a pattern recognition that like other customers want to export reports to X, Y, and Z. Like, we got you. Just wanted to follow up and let you know, if you ever have any questions, let me know. Listen, if I get one of those emails, and I'm jaded and cynical and old, I'm all those crusty. I
Totally.
get one of those, I'm like, cool. Like, I like you guys. I'm not going to chop you when I do my OpEx review. Like, you actually are, like, someone's alive in the box.
Yeah. Let's actually talk, because you didn't send me this email about a feature that I already have. You actually
No, I'm using that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already there.
Yeah. So I think, it comes back to, and I hate to beat the data drum, but honestly, like, people really mess up their, like, if you get your data right, it's just like marketing. Like, let's just like call spade right now. Like, if you have shitty marketing data, you're going to have shitty marketing outcomes. If you have
100%.
shitty customer data, you're going to have shitty digital success metrics.
Hmm.
Sorry. It
Yep.
just is.
Yep. Yeah. And then the question is, well, if you have shitty data, how are you going to clean up that data?
Well, the answer is yes, you should, but no, but too often it's like, it's not my problem, or I don't want to get into it, or I don't, I think it comes back to a lot of leaders. They don't understand what it takes to do that. And so they don't want to do it.
Hmm.
They'll apply pressure somewhere else because that just seems like something that's outside of their realm, especially if you're a commercial person and you're not a data person.
Hmm.
That's where you have to be like kind of intellectually curious and go find, like, listen, if you don't have you're the definition of a leader. If you don't have that skill set, go find someone that does, that you can trust, and start working on that problem.
Right. Exactly.
That's the path to digital customer success. I mean, is your data. That's the plumbing. It's
Hmm.
gross.
Yep. Absolutely. Man, couldn't have said it any better myself.
Sweet. You don't need me on.
I'm gonna hang up now. You can finish up the episode, the podcast.
Talk to everybody
Um,
later. Thanks,
wh-
Brian.
what as we kind of start to wrap things up here,
Yeah.
I would love to get a sense on how you keep your finger on the pulse, so to speak. What is your diet consist of podcasts, YouTube, books, all that stuff?
Um, I have two little kids, so my reading in the evening is like fantasy fiction to like an 8-year old.
Yeah.
But in my day job, Alex, which I think is what you're asking,
Hmm.
is I read a lot of the I read a lot of AI stuff just by the very virtue of like, that's my job. But I mentioned Ken So, Thomas Tungsten. He's a VC at Theory.
Mm.
He used to be at Redpoint. Super interesting stuff. Kind of macroeconomic trends too, which I think is really interesting. I read The Power and Prediction of Disruptive Economics of Artificial Intelligence recently.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it sounds. It actually is pretty interesting. And if you're scared of the future, like, you want to understand like really where this is going, and you don't want like the doom and gloom of like whatever media outlet is in your ear that day telling you should fear the beast. I think it could give you a well-rounded perspective.
I'm going to interrupt you there because I love that so much that there is this fear like AI is going to take over, or we're going to see robots and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, sure, maybe, but understanding the stuff is the first place to go. If you're afraid of something, like, go learn about it.
Develop an opinion, and if you want to be afraid of it, that's fine too. I don't think it's going to take a lot of people's jobs. I think if you have an informed understanding of how you can leverage it to do your jobs better, then it's just another tool, just like anything else that we've had in our lifetime that has made our jobs easier. Like for me, I went to college, there was no internet, man. There was
Right.
no email.
Yep.
My first job as a recruiter had a stand up fax on my desk and a phone
Yeah.
in a use group, the Usenet. So I think, by the way, like the people that got really good at those jobs early on that were technology, as technology evolved and email came around,
Hmm.
you embraced it,
Yep.
got an understanding of how to use it. Like it's really helpful now to be able to send an email.
Exactly.
Um, you read about some of these like despot leaders in countries that don't use the internet or a computer, and you got to kind of wonder a little bit. But those are the things that I look at. So I like, I follow a bunch of people on Substack. I go over to Product Hunt every now and then. I mean, there's some cutting. You get to see, like, if you just look at it for like a half an hour a week, you can kind of see like some trendy stuff that's going on. And every now and then you pick up a little tool like Gamma. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh man, like you want to create a presentation super fast using AI, like Gen AI.
Mm.
Like type a couple of bullet points in there, put your profile or your LinkedIn profile in. It creates a little, like it can create like a, imagine if you had to still do a QBR or something and
Right.
you could put some notes into something and it popped out a presentation into a format. It's amazing.
That's cool. I'll check that out.
I look at stuff like that. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. That's helpful. We'll obviously drop all the links down in the show notes, but I'll definitely go check that out right after we hang up.
If you haven't, have you read the Checklist Manifesto?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, you don't have to read the whole book. Go to Amazon and read the excerpt, and you'll get.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like this guy's a surgeon, and he writes like why, you know, uh, you think about airplanes, you think about surgeons. They have one thing in common, right? Like they're fairly error prone,
Hmm.
things that they're doing, but yet the errors are pretty minuscule, and you get the concept because you're nodding. Like so. He talks about like, and I talk about this with CS people every now and then. They're like, "I know, oh, man, I need some playbooks. Oh my God, I need playbooks. We need to get some playbook management in here." I'm like, you need to get some people some scenario training and give them a checklist, like a pilot, to go through. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. They have brains
Yep.
and they can do this stuff, but they just need to check off these things so they don't make errors.
Yeah.
And I think the Checklist Manifesto is a really cool book. And one of my former CEOs, probably one of the better things he did for me. It's by this guy, Atul Gawande, and like I said, he's a surgeon. And by the way, it's an entertaining read, so read that.
Sure. Yeah. And as you were describing it, I was like, yeah, some bells went off because somebody else was talking about the Checklist Manifesto as well, because it's like seriously, like, but it goes back to like the digital CS, the whole reason for digital CS in general is because, we don't want to take people's gigs. We don't want to, automate till, to death. We want to make the customer experience good and seamless and informed and smart, but we also want to make people's lives easier. So when you're talking about playbooks, it's like, yes, provide a checklist, but then also like, here's some email templates that you can customize and fire off and all that kind of stuff. Like, let's just take the guesswork out of it for a second here.
I agree, and I think that one of the subjects that doesn't come up is DCS. Is like, is it going to replace people? And it will, to a certain extent, perhaps on the early career side, replace some people. It may. You may disagree. Like
You may.
this one is an operator and a guy that like runs a company where I have to be cautious of spend.
Yeah.
I mean, digital, when I think about it from an operator's lens, would I rather have something run digitally well that requires fewer people? That is like one of my highest items on my operating expenses.
Yep.
And so I'd like to get it right. And by the way, I'd like to hire other people elsewhere.
Right.
Or I'd like to optimize what we've already done with people. And I
Yep.
think that the handoffs and the transitions in the margins from DS to a human touch, there's not enough of that going on in these companies. Like you can't just go all digital and you can't just go all high touch. Like it doesn't. There's a blend.
Yeah.
And there are jobs there for people, but
Sure.
I need less of certain types of people.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of Office Space. I talk to the customer. So you actually take the specs from the customer. Well, no, my secretary does that, but
Yeah, that's not. I don't touch it, but someone.
oh
That's a
man.
thing.
Well, look, Joel, I've really, really enjoyed our time together, and I appreciate your insights. And you have a lot of really intelligent, smart things to say about it. And I hope you come back at some point. But where can people find you, engage with you, and help you out?
Well, I'm really easy to find, so you can find me on LinkedIn. It's more of my mode than that's my only real social outlet these days. But I'm Joel at Sturdy.ai. Sturdy.ai is where I spend my days. If you want to help me out, clean up your data, make an effort. Do yourself a favor and me a favor, and everyone else around you a favor, and manage your data. Um, I appreciate you having me. It's real privilege to be on these things, and I love what you're doing. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. If you like what we're doing, or don't for that matter, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more information about the show at digitalcustomersuccess.com. My name is Alex Turkovich. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.